Hi, I'm Brandy Shampoo with Exploring Expression, and welcome to Sunday at 7. It's 7 o'clock, so I like to start on time and end on time, right? And we're just going to give people a couple of minutes to jump on. But today I wanted to talk about preparation. This is going to be the first one in a couple of episodes that we're going to do talking about preparation. Because guess what happened to me this week? You ready? I got my hurricane tracking map. I love weather and I love looking at weather and thinking about weather. And hurricane season has begun. And I just want to ask you, are you prepared? Are you prepared for hurricane season or whatever the next season is in your life? How would you know? Let me tell you a little story. Not long ago, my son is 7 now, so 7 years ago, when I was pregnant, I developed what's called peripartum cardiomyopathy. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, that is pregnancy related heart failure. Right? So, what does that mean? That means that for most of my pregnancy, I had to lay in the bed waiting to die because your heart is failing, right? As a single mother, suddenly my life ground to a halt. Have you ever had that situation where your life grounds to a complete and utter halt? What do you do then? Are you ready? You ready for that? So, what happened to me is suddenly I could no longer care for my children. I could no longer live my life. So, my father, who lived in another state at the time, had to come in and step into my life for months. So, let me ask you this question. Are you prepared for somebody to step into your life? Would they know what to do? Would they know what to feed your children? Would they know what time dance class is? Or what medications to take? Okay. This is why. I'm going to show you this, but let me say it's a little rough for wear because this is the copy we have for our house. This is my household management binder, and this is kind of what I wanted to talk about today. A household management binder is my guide to the running of my household. Right? Why is this important? This is important for two reasons. One, you never know when someone's going to have to step into your life. You could, there could be a disaster. You could have to evacuate. We're living in a time of pandemic when at any moment one of us could fall horrifically ill. And then what do you do? What do you do in those times? Are you prepared? Are you prepared for the things that life may throw at you? This is what we want to talk about. And how do you become prepared? Well, the one thing I want to talk about today is what information do you need to know and do you need to have handy about the members of your family? What information should you know and have handy about the members of your family? Now, we all know the easy stuff, the name and the birth date and all of that. But what about clothing sizes? What size clothes do your children wear? What size shoes? Now, we say, we could always measure them. We could always take them to the store with us and buy it. But that's not always the case. Years and years ago, I was in a tornado. I come from Moore, Oklahoma, and for those of you on there from Moore, Oklahoma, you know it's the tornado capital of the world. So, years and years ago, I was in a tornado. Um, and we lost everything. The house completely gone. We lost everything. We're transported to a shelter. Now, this particular tornado that I'm referencing happened to be before I had my children, but it was me and my fiance at the time. We were transported to the shelter. And we get there, and there's this poor little lady, this volunteer, standing in front of a clothing mountain. A clothing mountain. Because they take donations. Places like that rely on donations, and then when the when the unthinkable happens, they gather up all their donations and they put it in this big series of piles. And the those of us who have been through it, we walk through and we walk through in the line and we get our snack and we get to talk to FEMA and all of these things. And then we approach this woman and she says, "Who is in your family and what size do they wear?" Because she is then going to hand us some clothes because we had to leave with nothing. So if that was you and if that happened, what size do you and your family wear? Right? Or the situation I referenced earlier about having heart failure, my dad having to take over my life. My oldest son is special needs and relies on medication. What medication do your children take? When do they take it? So, the specific things that I have included in my family member important information. This is stuff that you need to know or have easily accessible. And the best way to have it easily accessible is to put it in a binder like this, to where if you have to evacuate, pick that up because it's got everything you need in it. Not only does it have family member important information, but it's got your Safe 7 meals, it's got your go bag list, it's got checklists, it's got everything you need to pick up the running of your household and run with it. So that somebody can pick up the running of your household and run with it until life resumes normalcy. Because these things aren't for the everyday, they're for the out of the ordinary. You're not going to be evacuating every day. In fact, I didn't think I was going to be evacuating at all. When I moved here to coastal Georgia, I was told if we were in like the sweet spot where hurricanes never hit here. I've been here 4 years and have had to evacuate 3 times. I don't know what the heck is that all about. However, being able to pick up this book and say, it's time to go. What do I need? What do you have in your go bag? Do you know what to grab? Right? In my binder, I have a list. This is the stuff. When you get to where you're going, what do you need to know about the member of your family, the people in your life? 1, medication. If anybody takes medication, you need to have a list at all times. What do they take and when do they take it? What do they take and when do they take it? And if possible, start gathering a small stockpile because you may not be able to get to a pharmacy. Right? 2, not just prescription medication, but as needed medication. Let me ask you this, ready? Do you take for headaches the same thing your child takes for headaches? Do you take for indigestion the same thing your child takes for indigestion? Maybe you're allergic to something and they're not. Maybe something works for them and not for you. So when you talk about your daily medication, it's not just daily prescription medication, but what medication works for common issues. And then even more important, allergies. Make sure the allergies are written down. For example, I'm allergic to penicillin. And so it's important if something happens to me and I go to a hospital that they know that. I'm highly allergic to penicillin. Some people are allergic to peanuts, right? If something happens and you evacuate and you go to a shelter, you don't want them giving your family member peanuts. Or if you fall ill and somebody has to come and step into your life and watch your children for a period of time, you don't want them unknowingly giving a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to your peanut allergy child, right? What about insurance information? Do you have that handy? Do you know where the insurance information is for your child? Medical insurance, eye insurance. Especially if you live in a tornado-prone area, Glasses are so, so fragile. So fragile. And yet, without them, some of us are blind. Do you know how to get hold of somebody to replace those and what insurance to use? Now, the second thing, so the first thing we talked about medication, medical issues. The second thing is contact numbers, your phone tree. Do you have a phone tree? If you have a phone tree, go ahead and put me in the comments. Put me if you have a phone tree and know where you are on it. Who will call you and who do you call? If something in your family happens, who calls you and who do you call? Now, let me offer this as well. A phone tree should not just be a single parent, a single contact. Because for each member of my family, I have what's called a phone tree list right here. And it says, this is the situation, and here's who I call. Because I guarantee you, the person I will call if my daughter is having emotional issues, right? If my daughter is crying for no reason and I don't understand it, because I'm her mom, I don't always understand, right? Is not the same person I would call if my autistic son is crying and I don't know why. And it's not the same person I would call if my 7-year-old is crying and I don't know why. Do you see the difference there? Now imagine, okay, you have the person you call for each person, for your daughter, the person you call for your son, the person you call for your younger child. Now, what if you're not there? What if you can't speak to tell people who to call? Nancy says it's a great idea even for senior folks. Absolutely. Absolutely. Who do you call? Who do you call if your parents fall? Who are you going to call? My parents live in Virginia and I live in Georgia. Who am I going to call? Or who am I going to call? I even have on spiritual needs. Because the spiritual needs of my father are not the spiritual needs of my son. Let me repeat that. The spiritual needs of my father are not the spiritual needs of my son. And people can have a spiritual crisis just as easily as they can have a medical crisis, a physical crisis, an emotional crisis. You can have a spiritual crisis. And you need to know who to call for those. Maybe the same person. Maybe it is the same person. But maybe it's not. And maybe it's a different person for each member of your family. Because trust me, when I'm having a spiritual moment, because we all do. When I'm having a spiritual moment, please do not call the youth minister. Because it's not for me. However, if my son is having a spiritual moment, that's the first person on my list. Because I know it's somebody my son trusts and respects. Right? And don't get me wrong, I trust and respect him, but he's not there for my spiritual needs. You see that? Everybody has their contact list for their needs. But if you're not there to be able to communicate that to the person who has to step into your life, this is where the binder comes in to help with that. Now, what else? What else should someone know? What else should someone know if they had to step in and run your life? They know the emergency contacts. They know the medical issues, right? They know allergies and medication. What about activities? Let me share this. My youngest son is a dancer. Loves it, and we spend a large amount of our time dancing. Now, he is in 2, 4, 5, like 6, 7 classes of dance. And each class has its own special, expensive pair of shoes that goes with it. So the person who's stepping into my life and taking my son to dance needs to know on Tuesdays he has ballet, take ballet shoes and tap shoes. But on Thursdays, make sure he takes clogging shoes, which are different from tap shoes. Right? How do they know that? Keep a list of what activities your children do and when they do it. What do they do when they do it? Maybe your children have piano lessons. Maybe your children need art time. Maybe your children have counselors. How is somebody going to know that if you can't speak to them? And inversely, even if you're there and for some reason have to leave, you want to be able, when you get to where you're going, to call those people and say, we're not going to be there. Because in that moment, it's hard to remember. I mean, we're busy. It's hard for me to remember, okay, now this is Tuesday and this is Wednesday and at 5:30. Where are we supposed to be? It's hard for us to remember sometimes on a normal day. Imagine how hard it is going to be when your heart is racing and your adrenaline's high and the walls are caving in. You don't want to have to think about that. You want to just be able to look. Okay? Like I mentioned before, also on that page are clothing sizes, shirt sizes, pant sizes, shoe sizes, everything that you need to know. And favorites. Favorites. Let me tell you the story. So, there's been a couple of times in my life that somebody had to step in an emergency basis. I'm a single mother. These things happen. It takes a village. Remember that phrase, it takes a village to raise a child? That is never so true as when you're a single mother. You have got to draw your tribe around you. Whatever tribe it may be, you're not alone. There's somebody around you to call. Find that person. Find that person and write them down. When I moved from Oklahoma to Georgia, I knew nobody. Nobody. I moved on faith. I moved on faith. And when I got here, I didn't have any family. I didn't have any friends. It was just me, the kids, and here's Georgia. So the first couple of people I met, I put my son in the daycare and I said, okay, daycare teacher, you're it. You're it for right now. Until I find some other people, you're it. Let me write you down. Because you have to have somebody. You have to have somebody in your pocket that you can call. As a single parent, it's so important. And when you call that person, to be able to hand them, here, this is, mixing up some homeschool stuff in it. This is what you need to know about my child. I'm having an emergency. I don't have time to go into it here. And in this book, you know what it says about my son? It says, give him macaroni and cheese and hot dogs. He likes that. He likes macaroni and cheese and hot dogs. He likes Dogman books. An emergency is not the time to introduce something new to your family, especially if you have special needs children like I do. An emergency is not the time to try to get your son to suddenly like green beans. If he didn't like green beans before, he sure as heck isn't going to eat them now. Don't fight it. Don't fight that fight. Have on here, this is the stuff my child likes. This is the stuff he doesn't like. This is the stuff he's afraid of. My youngest son hates water. I know. And we live next to an ocean and there's beaches and swimming pools, and this child does not like water. He does not like baths. He does not like rain. Hates rain. He does not like oceans. He loves going to the ocean. He doesn't like water. That's something somebody needs to know, because he tends to panic, right? And when everyone else is already panicking, the last thing you need is for them to try to force your child, an already anxious child, because when an emergency happens, it's not just you that gets anxiety. It's not just you that worries and that panics and that stresses. Our children stress. They feel it. They feel it just as much as we do. And they're confused and they're scared. And what they need is normalcy. And that may sound like um, anathema. Is that the word? Anathema? That may sound out of sorts, but any normalcy that we can bring to our family during a time of an unnatural occurrence is a little bit of control we can grasp onto and a little bit of hope for them. So keep a list of their favorites. That also helps when you go to a shelter, that the volunteer can look there and say, oh, you really like dogs. Here's a dog stuffed animal. Because they got this big mountain of stuffed animals too. I mean, the people who run shelters, it is an art and they do it so well. It is an art and they rock at it. Okay. The last page, the last thing I have on the information you need to know about your family is the routine. Okay. So we have your medical and physical information. We have your scheduled activities. We have clothing sizes, likes and dislikes. And then we have our morning and evening routine. Who here has a bedtime routine? I bet a lot of us do. Whether it's sitting back by candlelight and breathing, that's mine. At the end of the day, after everyone's in bed, I light my candles and I sit back with the candles on and Daniel's lullabies, because part of his evening routine is playing Christian lullabies by Alexa, which plays through the whole entire house. So we all get to listen. But that's my evening routine, and it's what helps me. Now, what's the evening routine for your child? Okay, I have 3 children. I have a 19-year-old, I have a 16-year-old special needs, and I have a 7-year-old. Do you imagine they all have the same routine? If someone steps into your life, are they going to try to put all of the children on one routine? It's easier if you know. And the beauty and the benefit of a household management binder is it takes the guesswork out of it. Because you're not going to be thinking about that in an emergency. When it's time to evacuate, because, it's hurricane season. And I'm going to tell you, when it's time to go, I'm going to go. I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to go. When they say voluntary evacuations, I've already got my car packed and I'm on the way. In Tornado Alley, back in Oklahoma, when those sirens go off, it's time to go. It's not time to be thinking about who's doing what and what's happening. When you fall sick, think about what happened. Those people who came down with coronavirus, not the really unfortunate ones, but the ones that came down with the milder case and suddenly couldn't leave their basement. I was watching, what newscaster was it? Cuomo? Is it Chris? Whatever his name is. But he was talking about he was just stuck in his basement for 2.5 weeks. And his life ran around him. His life continued around him. When I got sick with heart failure, I had to take to my bed, and I lay in my bed for months. But school still occurred, and activities still happened, and dinner still had to get made. And somebody had to step into your life. Think about your life for a moment. Just pause. Think about your spouses. Think about your children. Think about your parents, if your parents are older. Because, we're the sandwich generation. Our parents are living a long time, bless them. Which is a good thing. It's a good thing. And our children, and we're in the middle. And so we have to think about that. We have to think about our parents. We have to think about our children. We have to think about our spouses. We have to think about, ready? Our pets. Our pets. Write these things down. Put them in your binder. So that when an emergency happens, you just have to reference. You don't have to think. because there are other things on your mind. And you know what? This is what I'm going to do. So after we finish this, go ahead and share this video. Share this video if you liked it and if you got something out of it. And once you've shared it, come back here and put done in the comments. Even if you're watching this on replay, and don't forget to hashtag replay so I know you're there, come back and write done in the comments. And I'm going to send you the family member important information list. I'm going to send you these pages, here they are, so that you can fill one out for each member of your family and start your own household management binder, because this is so important. This is the start of hurricane season, and the National Weather Service has said it's going to be above average. What that means, we're going to see. But you know, at the way that 2020 is going, nothing will surprise me, right? 2020 has been rocking the boat from the very beginning, between you know, the coronavirus and the civil unrest that's been going on, and you know, now an above average. We've already had two named storms, and it's only May. The real season hasn't even started yet. And you never know. And it doesn't have to be something catastrophic like the coronavirus or a hurricane. You could fall and suddenly be unable to drive or in a wheelchair. Anything can happen, and through preparation, it's prepare now so we don't have to react. Act now so we don't have to react later. Let me say that again. Act now so that you don't have to react later. Because all of us, none of us want to forget something crucial when the chips are down. None of us want to do that. It's by preparing now, when we have the time. We have the energy. Prepare now while it's easy. Okay? And I'll help you out by sending you this family member important information guide. And be sure to come back next week, because next week I'm going to be talking about part 2 of this. So this was part 1, important information. Part 2 is going to be called the Safe 7. The Safe 7. You're not going to want to miss that. Okay? So I hope to see you next week, Sunday at 7 o'clock, right here on my channel, Eastern Standard Time. And that's it. Have a wonderful week and a wonderful rest of the weekend, however much is left of it. And we'll see you next week.